Lana, would you go ahead and start us off?
Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and whatever your life circumstance, you are welcome here.
Today, we celebrate the Unitarian tradition of the flower ceremony, sometimes called flower communion. The flower ceremony is an annual tradition among Unitarian Universalists. It began in Prague about 97 years ago in the Unitarian Church that was established and served by Reverend Norbert Čapek. In 1941, Čapek was arrested by the Nazis, who accused him of high treason and used several of his own sermons as evidence against him. Čapek was sent to Dachau concentration camp, and he was ultimately killed in a gas chamber. The last time that Zora Čapek saw her father, he gave her a letter containing a poem he wrote for her. The composer Elizabeth Alexander took excerpts from that poem for her choral piece, Be Grateful, My Soul, which is our prelude today.
Even though 1,000 times disappointed and fallen in the fight, even though faced with a world that now seems worthless, I have lived a life amidst eternity. Be grateful, my soul, be grateful, my soul. I have lived amidst
It was Hutton Wagner's birthday this last Thursday, so I've asked if he would light our chalice.
We light this chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
Thank you, and happy birthday. Our opening hymn was written by Norbert Čapek. The lyrics invite us not just to appreciate the glories of creation, but to be creators, to take an active part in the creation of what is. It's number 78 in our gray hymnal, Color and Fragrance. And this was performed at First Unitarian last year at our last flower ceremony. In addition to Flower Ceremony Sunday, this is UUSC Sunday, the day when we celebrate the 80th anniversary of the founding of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. As our time for all ages, here is a short video from the UUSC that explains a little bit more about the organization's history and about the important work that it does today. This time for all ages is intended for littlest kids, the littlest ones among us, on up.
Hi, friends. It's great to all be together even while we're staying in our homes. Today, I want to tell you a story about how the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or UUSC, began. It all started 80 years ago when Unitarians in the United States were watching what was happening in Europe, and they were getting very worried. They were worried because a man named Hitler and the people he was leading, people called the Nazis, were becoming very powerful and hurting a lot of people. The Nazis believed some very mean and wrong things. They believed that the only people who were any good were people who were just like them. They wanted everyone to be the same as they were, and if you weren't, well, they would kick you out of your house, they would take all of your things, they wouldn't let you work. And eventually the Nazis started killing a lot of people who they thought were different from them. Jewish people, gay people, people with disabilities, all of them were targets of the Nazis during this time. It was very scary. What do you think you would do if you saw something like this happening? Would you want to help? Would people in your UU community want to help too? It was the same 80 years ago. The Unitarians wanted to help people in Europe who were being targeted by the Nazis. So, a Unitarian minister and his wife from Wellesley, Massachusetts, Waitstill and Martha Sharp, went to Europe to see how they could help the people there. They found lots of ways to help when they got there, but they had to be creative because the Nazis were always watching. and it would be very dangerous if they got caught. The Sharps helped get paperwork to people that they needed to escape to safer places. Sometimes they would even sneak people past the Nazi guards wearing disguises. They also helped people, including kids like you, get food and clothing at a time when it was very hard to find both. The Sharps were very brave, but they didn't do this work alone. They worked with people in the Jewish communities in Europe, and they worked with other Unitarians in the United States who would send them money and other supplies so more people in Europe could be helped. That is how the Unitarian Service Committee, now called UUSC, got started. Today, UUSC is still working around the world to help people who are being treated badly find safety and have their human rights respected. We work with migrant communities who fled their homes in Central America and are seeking asylum in the United States. We work with Rohingya Muslims from Burma who are facing inhumane treatment and displacement by their government. We work with people around the world whose home communities are threatened by climate change, and many, many more. Both 80 years ago and today, UUs come together through the UU Service Committee to work with people who need it most. And we will continue to be there to help into the future, because Unitarian Universalists believe in doing what we can to make the world a better and safer place for everyone. Thank you for all the ways you help us do this work. We couldn't do it without everyone joining together. So grateful that you're here. Thanks for listening to this story. Bye.
Lana Henson has a personal reflection for us this morning. Lana?
This is UUSC Sunday, and I would like to share with you my thoughts on why this organization is so important. As you just saw, this year is the 80th anniversary of our service committee. Many of you know how I became the local representative of UUSC for our church as I took over from our longtime church activist, Jerome Simpson. Like most of you, all I knew about UUSC was the guest at your table boxes at Thanksgiving. I have since come to value and appreciate the great work our service committee does around the world. I was raised in the Baptist faith, and we always tithed a certain percentage to our foreign missionaries. I liken membership in UUSC to this. The big difference being we go out to right social injustice in the world and not to convert the world to Jesus. I know this church has a big social justice conscience, as evidenced by our monthly Change for Change. We cannot all go out and do hands-on social justice work, but UUSC can and does with their over 60 grassroots organizations. Even in this time of COVID-19, UUSC's social justice work continues. In Louisiana, as we all know, there has been a spike in COVID-19 deaths. UUSC's partner, the Lowlander Center, is using UUSC funding to get resources to the people who need them to cover their basic needs during this time. In Thailand, factories have closed, leaving Muslim migrants from Burma without jobs or even a place to live. UUSC partner, Burma Human Rights Network, is providing vital support by raising funds for food assistance. I would urge you to log on to uusc.org to watch more videos and to read about the important work our service committee does around the world. And if you are not a member, I would urge you to join. UUSC does their work with money given through fundraisers like Guest at Your Table and through memberships. For only $40 a year, you can make this commitment to global social justice action.
Thanks, Lana. Every Sunday when we are together in church, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community. There have been only a few exceptions to this rule, including last year when we collected funds for a project to teach English to members of the Oklahoma City immigrant community, and at the Christmas Eve services where we typically collect an offering in support of the minister's discretionary fund. The discretionary fund was established to enable the minister to provide confidential financial assistance to individuals and families, both within and outside of the congregation, who are experiencing pressing needs. You can read the detailed description of the fund on our website under the Policies and Procedures tab, and I'll also include a link to it in the next email newsletter. Normally, individuals and families can only access this financial support for one emergency, but we are in times that are unlike anything we've experienced in recent memory. Many in our community have lost their jobs, and along with that, their medical insurance. In some cases, a family that depends on the income of one parent has lost its sole source of funding. And in other cases, two working parents have both been laid off or furloughed. But bills still need to be paid, and the stimulus checks that many of us have received aren't sufficient to cover all these costs. Of course, some people are still waiting for their support from the federal government, and they've run out of alternatives. And so at this time, I'm waiving the restriction on one-time access to support from the minister's discretionary fund and determining eligibility based on the severity of the need. This means that these funds will be distributed to needy recipients at a significantly higher rate than usual. And this is why the Social Justice Committee and the Board of Trustees have voted to make the minister's discretionary fund the Change for Change recipient for the month of May. Now, some of you have already sent in contributions to the discretionary fund, and I have been so moved by your generosity, and I'm grateful to be part of such a caring community. Thank you. You are making an immediate difference in people's lives. So at this point, I'll play some music and give you all some time to make your donation to our special Change for Change. You might wish to make your donation using a credit card through our website, or you might find your checkbook, write out a check, and put it aside to mail to First Unitarian tomorrow morning. Let today's offering reflect our highest aspirations for the work of this church in the world. The offertory is Immortal Love, based on a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier, and again with music by Elizabeth Alexander. his 1957 essay, How Flowers Changed the World, the American naturalist Lauren Isley describes the development of a new form of life that happened during the Mesozoic era, the time of dinosaurs. He writes, quote, "Once upon a time, there were no flowers at all. Wherever one might have looked, from the poles to the equator, one would have seen only the cold, dark, monotonous green of a world whose plant life possessed no other color. Somewhere, just a short time before the close of the age of reptiles, there occurred a soundless, violent explosion. It marked the emergence of the angiosperms, the flowering plants," unquote. A major reason for the success of flowering plants was their diversity. Some flowers release their seeds to the wind on little parachutes. Some seeds are equipped with hooks so they can catch a ride on some passing animal or on your sweater. Some are hidden inside of delicious, juicy fruits that birds and other animals eat and pass through their systems so that the seeds can travel far and wide. Quoting from Isley again, quote, "The flowers bloomed and bloomed in ever larger and more spectacular varieties. Some were pale, unearthly night flowers intended to lure moths in the evening twilight. Some among the orchids even took the shape of female spiders in order to attract wandering mates. Some flamed redly in the light of noon or twinkled modestly in the meadow grasses. Intricate mechanisms splashed pollen on the breast of hummingbirds or stamped it on the bellies of black grumbling bees, droning assiduously from blossom to blossom," unquote. In 1923, when Reverend Norbert Chapek was looking for a Unitarian alternative to the Christian communion of bread and wine, he chose flowers as the things that would best represent the individuals in his congregation. Flowers, because they are all around us, so common that they are easy to overlook, and yet each one a miracle. Flowers, because of their amazing diversity, each kind with its own distinct color, shape, and fragrance. And not one of these qualities is accidental. Red flowers attract hummingbirds. Yellow and purple flowers attract bees. Some insects are drawn to the sweet smell of honeysuckle. Others are drawn to the rotting smell of the corpse flower. Each flower, in the way it presents itself to the world, tells a story about its larger community, including the insects and the animals that play an important part in its life. Maybe one of the reasons Chapek chose flowers as the symbol of church community was because of their evolutionary history. Into a world of monotony, flowers brought an explosion of colors, a rainbow of difference. Each one might be fragile and incredibly finite, but as a group, they changed the whole world. 97 years after the first flower ceremony, we are living in a time when some folks seem to have forgotten the importance of diversity. Some are actively opposed to it. The white nationalists and others who want to stamp out difference and enforce a racist, cultural, sexual, linguistic, and religious conformity. And others seem to think that diversity, the incredible variety of unique, precious lives, is less important than the economy. One lieutenant governor even went so far as to say, quote, "There are more important things than living." with that more important thing being commerce. There is so much about coronavirus that scientists still don't understand, but there are a few things that are known. We know that it's not enough to just say that people who are ill should stay away, because the virus can be communicated by people showing no symptoms at all. We know that some people are much more likely to die of COVID-19 than others, including people who are older and have pre-existing health conditions. We also know that the disease is dealing a disproportionately more lethal blow to communities of color. And yet, there are some who say that their liberties are more important than the health of all these other people. There are some who would rush to a return to business as usual, at least for some people. What would church be if all the people with elevated risk for serious complications from COVID-19 just stayed home? What would church be without our elders, without all the people with compromised immune systems, or diabetes, or heart conditions, or breathing problems like asthma? I can tell you what it would be. It wouldn't be our church. And that is why, despite the governor's call to begin reopening churches for in-person services, First Unitarian will continue in this virtual environment and will refrain from opening the building until all of us are safe to be together. Staying apart like this is hard. Some days it is actually painful to not be in the physical presence of loved ones in the midst of our beloved community. But we stay apart because we love each other, because we care for every single member of our community, including those who are at greatest risk for dying or becoming seriously ill with the disease that is plaguing us all. In some ways, the next few weeks and months will be even harder than what we've just survived. There was some comfort in knowing that everyone was, at least in theory, living by the same rules. But now that will be changing. Some will choose to go out in public without wearing a mask. Some will wear a mask and maintain physical distance, and others will choose to remain at home. It will be confusing, and it will probably be frustrating. But there is a simple guideline we can follow that can help us weather this time. It's a combination of our first and seventh principles. Each person has inherent worth and dignity, and we are all interdependent. In other words, every single person matters. Every single life matters. In all we do, we must remember those who are at greatest risk and behave as if everyone, including ourselves, is a part of that group. Because the most vulnerable among us are not expendable. The most vulnerable are us. 150 million years ago, flowers changed the world. And today, all of us together in our great and glorious diversity can stand against the forces of conformity, can resist a philosophy that would place commerce above human lives and some human lives above others. The rainbow of difference, illuminated by a universal and courageous love, can change the world. It already has, and it will. In 1923, the minister of the Unitarian Church in Prague, Czechoslovakia, Reverend Norbert Čapek, wanted to create a ritual that symbolized the unity of the congregation without utilizing the bread and wine of Christian communion. And so Čapek created the flower ceremony. He asked congregants to bring flowers from their gardens or that they found growing along the roadsides. The flowers represented the gifts of the earth and the unique beauty and importance of every individual. Each person brings their flower to place within the communal banquet as a symbol of the way that we freely join in community to create something that is even more complex and beautiful than its individual parts. Of course, today, we aren't able to be together, all together in person. We aren't able to bring our individual flowers to blend them in one great bouquet. So we'll need to make do with assistance of technology. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. This is a new experiment. It may or may not work, but let's give this a try. If you have a smartphone near you, or if you're on a smartphone and you have a computer or a tablet near you, go to that and type in www.menti.com. Menti is MENTI.com. www.menti.com. And don't worry if you can't do that right now. If you need to use the same computer that you're on right now, this is still going to work after. I'm going to hold this open and you can do this after the service as well. But if you can do it, try it now. Go to www.menti.com. When you get there on the screen, you're going to see a little place to type in some numbers. The numbers to type in are 165098. 165098. And you'll see a question there. The question is, what blessings do you bring to this community? This is a sort of a way of bringing your flower. What blessings do you bring to this community? You can answer with up to 3 words or very short phrases. And then your words will make a kind of a bouquet, which I'll share with you in just a minute. And again, we'll keep it open. And as we get more and more of these, I'll share it on our Facebook page and in our newsletter. So one more time, www.menti.com. And then type in 165098, and then type in the words that represent the blessings you bring. I'm going to play some music for just a couple of minutes, and I'll share my screen, and we'll see what, ideally, we'll see what words you're typing in live time. Ah, how lovely. Look at the beautiful bouquet of blessings that we all contribute to this community. So I ask that you now take your flowers and then just hold them up to the screen where people can see them. In the Prague church, once the flowers were collected, Reverend Chapek would offer this prayer for blessing. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talent discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. Amen. Traditionally, the flower ceremony ends when all of the congregants come back to the bouquet that's been collected and take one flower, one that's different from the one they brought, and they carry that back to their homes. This symbolizes the way that we both give of ourselves and receive from others. So what I'd like to do now is begin by saying 3 things that I receive from this community. And then I'll call on someone else to say 3 things that they receive, and they can unmute themselves before they do that. So if I call you, unmute yourself, say 3 things that you receive from this community, and then call on someone else who you can see in your gallery view, and they'll do the same thing. We have about 15 minutes left in the service, so I think we have, well, I'll see how much time we have. It may be like 8 people or so, maybe a little bit more, but just very quickly. So 3 things you receive from this community. Call the name of someone else, and then they'll have their turn. So for me, I receive from this community grounding, inspiration, and hope. And I'm gonna call on Rebecca Kay to say 3 things that she receives.
I knew you were going to call on me. I receive love, fellowship, and grace. And I would like to pass it to Joan and Bernest.
Ernest?
I enjoy the fellowship, the intellectual stimulus, and the kindness.
There we go. And who do you want to speak next?
Let's see. Paula Geisinger.
Okay, I receive gratitude and support and love. And I will pass it over to David Moore.
Well, I receive love, which everybody else does apparently, and that's probably number 1. And I receive compassion, and I receive inspiration.
Who are you going to pass it to?
Well, let's see. How about Chris Gonzalez?
But I receive love, encouragement, and a sense of purpose. And I will call on Becky Talent.
I receive hugs, music, and a sense of family. And I will pick Pat Corley.
Hello, my friends. I receive all of that and more from each one of you. Who am I going to pick next? I'd like to hear from Bob Hurst.
I knew you were going to do that, Pat. Because that's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. And for one is, I certainly find like-minded friends in the church, and that really includes people that I can have discussions that I would not really have with very many other people. So that it allows me to explore things that might otherwise not be explored. And I think that's good enough. That certainly is good enough for me. And I am going to pick, I'm going to pick somebody different. I'm going to pick Elaine Andrusol.
I think Elaine might have dropped out.
Then I will pick.
Hello. Receive friendship, and I think grounding, and inspiration of kind of other ways of thinking, and of what's really important in life. So with, I guess, inspiration and purpose kind of go together for me. Thank you.
Let's do one last one.
Okay, let's see. Let's do Susan Hakel.
Flow off the edge of the page. The big ones are friendships, laughter, and music.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, everyone. Well, it's time for us to start to bring our service to a close. So Lana, will you say the words to extinguish our chalice while Hutton blows it out?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
So I leave you today with these words by UU musician David Glasgow from his song, Here Together. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. And my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again. This is our postlude, Here Together by David Glasgow. And then at the very end, I'll come back and give you one last more look at the word bouquet that has been generated. So this is our postlude, Here Together by David Glasgow.
There is a place I love to call my home. There is a peace I only feel in sharing it with you and letting you share
Blessings on all of you. I hope to see many of you at the board recap and the virtual coffee hour, which will be starting in about 5 minutes. And please be well, be safe. Seeing all of you each week is such a gift and such a blessing. Thank you. Blessed be.